So Jesus was dead. Nothing was left of his body. His friends grieved. Contrary to Roman expectations, his friends remembered and continued to emulate his lifestyle and to follow his teachings. We can find a glimpse, maybe an echo would be a better word, of his teachings in the Gospels, but it requires some digging, and I'm going to put that off for this week, because I think there is an older witness who shows Jesus' values. That witness is Paul. Writing decades before the New Testament Gospels, Paul was one who, while never actually meeting Jesus, learned his values. The timeline helps us to see the flow. We know from sources outside the New Testament that Pontius Pilate was the Roman governor in Judea for about 10 years. That frames when Jesus was crucified. I suspect toward the end of that period. Paul wrote to the Galatians sometime around the year 50. It's easy to see that Paul's life overlapped Jesus, even though they never met. Now we can look at what lies behind our passage from Galatians. Where did Paul get the idea that there is no longer Jew or Greek, there is no longer slave nor free, there is no longer male and female, for all of you are one in Christ Jesus? To answer that question, one needs only to turn back to the first chapter of that same letter, where Paul writes about his younger self. You have heard, no doubt, of my earlier life in Judaism. I was violently harassing the assembly of God and was trying to destroy it. I advanced in Judaism beyond many among my people of the same age, for I was far more zealous for the traditions of my ancestors. My focus here is on his zeal for the traditions of the ancestors. Those traditions included, among other things, of course, kosher and male dominance of women. Before going on, a quick look at kosher. We often think of it in terms of food and diet. Well, that's part of it. But it's much more. It's a whole lifestyle. And not only is it a lifestyle, but it's a way of setting boundaries. Those who practice kosher are part of a group. Those who don't are outside the group. If we ask, what were the followers of Jesus doing that so upset Paul? Part of the answer, I think, is that they were violating kosher and practicing egalitarian relationships between men and women. That is, for the followers of Jesus, there was neither Jew nor Greek, and both male and female were equal. In addition, just I suppose to add insult to injury, the followers of Jesus ignored class distinctions. All, including slaves, were equal members of the assemblies. Now, once Paul experienced his vision of the resurrected Jesus, he realized that God really does want people to reach out beyond boundaries and treat all human beings as equals. I think you can see the trail I'm following here. Jesus taught people to treat all others as equals. His followers organized assemblies around that principle, and Paul, who had an initial negative reaction to this, came to understand that this is the best, perhaps even the divine, way to organize community. Thus, Paul indirectly learned from Jesus, and his vision confirmed his learning. Let's pause for a moment and look at that experience that changed Paul's heart. It was not the event on the Damascus Road described by Luke in the Acts of the Apostles. The writer created that fictional story to suit his own purposes. Paul's own witness testifies to a prophetic call like Isaiah's, for example. That call also included a vision of the resurrected Jesus. Paul seems to have in mind an image like the one in Isaiah 56. He believed God had called him as an ambassador to the Gentiles. He truly felt that time was short. The current creation will vanish and a new one will come into being. I add that as time passed, Paul realized that his sense of urgency may have been misplaced. Often overlooked by interpreters of Paul is that he believed the communities of Jesus' followers previewed the new creation. That is, the assemblies of Jesus' followers were called to model the new creation's style of living. Later generations shifted the new creation off into an indefinite future, thus abdicating their responsibility to challenge and change social structures in the present. Let's jump now a few decades forward to Mark. I like this story of the Syrophoenician woman because it shows Jesus learning a lesson. That's something church tradition doesn't really like you to think. Mark, however, wants his community to recognize that even Jesus needed to learn to reach outside his comfort zone and engage positively with others. The facts that this person is both not Jewish and a woman neatly combines two of Paul's elements. Going beyond Paul, others outside the group of Jesus followers also saw this inclusiveness as a challenge. Here's one of the elements in Jesus' teaching that caught the attention of Roman authorities. For it not only challenged the traditions of Paul's ancestors, it also undermined Roman rule. That rule was built on a foundation of raw male power. Any challenge to that power had to be met with overwhelming force. In my opinion, it's well beyond time for the church to live Jesus' inclusive teachings. Too many church leaders want to maintain male dominance. Too many in the church want to exclude the other, whether the other is of a different skin color or a different gender identity. You can extend the list as you want. At its best, at its original best, our tradition is inclusive. Let's live that best.